Look, this is a lot to get to. So, Louis, what are you hearing about this early intelligence assessment here on exactly how much damage they think was done to this nuclear site in Iran?
Kayna, this initial assessment, which was produced by U.S. Central Command and by the Defense Intelligence Agency, says that the initial assessment is that while there was significant damage to the 3 nuclear facilities that were targeted by the United States over the weekend, it only set back the nuclear program by several months, and that Iran's enriched uranium, what they had already produced prior to those attacks this weekend, remains untouched.
You're gutless losers. I say that to CNN because I watch it. I have no choice. I got to watch that garbage. It's all garbage. It's all fake news. But I think CNN is a gutless group of people. And the people that run it, nobody even knows it's been sold so many times. But the people that run it ought to be ashamed. Well, we basically have 2 countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that? Yeah, I do. They violated it, but Israel violated it too. Are you questioning if Israel is committed? Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I've never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because of one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. We basically have 2 countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
Now, we're hearing incredibly optimistic views coming out of the White House as far as how long this can hold and what this is going to look like. That obviously still remains to be seen on the implementation side of this, and waiting to see if the firing does stop and if Iran and Israel do both agree to this. Because, you know, speaking of the fluidity of the situation, it was just 24 hours ago that President Trump himself was suggesting a regime change in Iran was a possibility. And obviously right before that, having the United States strike Iran. And so, yes, there have been a lot of phone calls going back and forth. In part, this has to do with Iran's limited response earlier, where they fired on a U.S. base in Qatar, but there were no casualties. We know that they did give a heads up that they were going to be firing on U.S. bases without exactly specifying which ones. But that is the question here, is if the United States felt that it did not need to respond to the Iranian retaliation, did that create the space for this? That is what we've been hearing from administration officials. And so the question is whether or not this still holds for the next few hours.
Caitlin, I just been given word that Iran, according to a diplomat who briefed CNN, Iran has agreed to the ceasefire. So this is significant. I just want to try to learn some more information as soon as we get it about that. But if that is the case, that's incredibly significant, because that is, we were waiting. We had not heard from Iran. We had not heard from Israel. All we were going on so far has been the president's social media post, which was some 2 hours ago. So again, that is the first indication we have that Iran has agreed to this.
You said totally obliterated. The president has said totally obliterated the Iran nuclear program.
Yeah.
Do you know for sure where all the highly enriched uranium is?
Well, Brett, I think that's actually not the question before us. The question before us is, can Iran enrich the uranium to a weapons-grade level, and can they convert that fuel to a nuclear weapon? And we know, based on the success of our mission, of course, the leadership of the president, but the incredible skill of our military, that the 2 mission objectives are completely successful. We know that they cannot build a nuclear weapon. Now, you asked about the highly enriched uranium.
Yeah, like 900 pounds of it.
But what we know, Brett, is that uranium is something that exists in very large supply. Our goal was to bury the uranium, and I do think the uranium is buried, but our goal was to eliminate the enrichment and eliminate their ability to convert that enriched fuel into a nuclear weapon. I think that's an important point, Brett, because so many of the folks who have focused on the highly enriched uranium,
sure, 60%.
The main focus, Brett, has been to destroy their enrichment capacity, because we don't want that 60% uranium to become 90% uranium. That's the real concern, and that's what was so successful about our mission.
What is the significance of this ceasefire? I think this is enormously significant, Stuart, and I think that what we've seen happen in the last week has essentially reset relations in the Middle East in a way that could endure for a generation. It's something that I think has been long overdue. It took the willingness and the resolve of President Trump to actually go forward with this in a way that I think was both defensive of America's interests and supportive of our ally Israel. But this is the thing, Stuart, it has to require real openness, transparency, and consequences for the Iranian regime if they do anything towards trying to rebuild their nuclear program.
President Trump accusing Israel and Iran of violating a ceasefire just hours after it went into effect. The president slamming both nations for not following the deal that he helped broker after days of strikes and fighting in the region. Trump using some strong language earlier, telling our Rachel Scott he's not happy with either side.
I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing.
Well, hours after Trump announced that so-called 12-day war would soon be over, there were reports of explosions coming, and both Israel and Iran blaming each other for breaking this agreement. Israel claiming it only responded to a barrage of missiles launched by Tehran before the ceasefire went into effect, but Iran's state-run media is denying any violation, saying that the country's president won't violate the ceasefire unless Israel does. Israel's defense minister echoing that same sentiment earlier today. Of course, all of this coming, though, after yesterday's Iranian missile attack on a U.S. airbase in Qatar, just 2 days after the U.S. struck 3 nuclear sites in Iran. Now, Trump had touted monumental damage done to all nuclear sites in Iran. But sources are now telling ABC News that early intelligence finds the U.S. strikes perhaps only set Iran's nuclear program back by months.
And that the centrifuges that produce are used to enrich uranium are also largely intact. So these findings obviously at odds with the comments that we've heard from President Trump and from Defense Secretary Hegseth, who both said that Iran's nuclear program was obliterated. And we got comment, we reached the Pentagon for comment. We received a statement provided to us on behalf of Pete Hegseth, which said that based on everything we've seen, and quote, "I've seen it all, our bombing campaign obliterated Iran's ability to create nuclear weapons." So he is standing by that assessment that he made publicly over the weekend. But now we're seeing that the initial intelligence assessment, at least, is proving to be at odds with his characterization.
Wow. So, Selena, as you heard Louis say, SecDef standing by his statement. What are we hearing from the White House?
Yeah, well, first of all, this is in stark contrast to what we've heard from the president and the White House saying that Iran's nuclear program has been, quote, obliterated. But today, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, in response to our reporting and from CNN, she is blasting it, saying that this is a result of, quote, low-level loser leakers. And let me just read to you part of her statement. She says, quote, "This assessment and the leak is a clear attempt to demean President Trump and discredit the brave fighter pilots who conducted a perfectly executed mission to obliterate Iran's nuclear program. Everyone knows what happens when you drop 14 30,000-pound bombs perfectly on their targets. Total obliteration." But again, at least according to this initial report, and the caveat here is that this can change as more intelligence assessments come out, which was highly classified. This report says that the U.S. believes, based on this early report, that significant damage was done, but that was mostly to the above ground structures, not to the ones deep underground. And according to one person, the enriched uranium was not destroyed and the centrifuges are largely intact. So there have been questions ever since the U.S. strikes about just how severe the damage was. Was Iran able to move some of that enriched uranium and those centrifuges out of those sites, knowing that those U.S. attacks were coming? And also the bigger question of, did these U.S. strikes actually convince Iran to drop their nuclear ambitions, or did it in fact give them further reason to continue to pursue their nuclear ambitions moving into the future?
Yeah, adding fuel to the fire there, so to speak.